It was almost 3 a.m. at Boston Maternity Hospital when I walked into the quiet recovery ward and saw her. Tiny, still pink, wrapped in a patterned hospital blanket. Her eyes barely opened under the softest lashes I had ever seen. She didn't cry, only made little snuffling sounds, as if she was trying to understand what the world had just done to her. And maybe she was, because her mother had left just like that. Signed the papers and walked away. I had seen this happen before in my 20 years as a labor and delivery nurse. You learn not to flinch, you learn to place paperwork before heartbreak. But this time, something inside me cracked. This baby didn't feel like the others. There was something about her. The way her tiny fingers curled toward warmth, the way she hiccuped softly in her sleep, the helplessness of being left behind. I sat beside her bassinet longer than I should have, just watching her breathe. My mind kept drifting back to a memory I thought I had buried: our child. The one I never got to meet, the one I lost halfway through a painful pregnancy years ago. The pain had faded with time, but it never truly disappeared. It lived quietly inside me, and now it came alive in the presence of this little girl who had no name and no one. I reached out, placing my finger lightly against her palm. She grasped it, I froze, and in that moment, I knew I couldn't leave her. I couldn't let her become just another file in the system. I didn't care what Richard would say. I had to try. I stepped into the empty hallway and took a deep breath. My hands trembled as I pulled out my phone and dialed him. He answered on the third ring, his voice sharp and tired. Eliza, it's the middle of the night. What's wrong? Richard, I stumbled over my words. I need to ask you something. It's important. There's a baby here. A newborn. Her mother left. She's healthy. She's beautiful. I know where this is going. He cut me off. His tone was like a blade. Don't even start, but I pressed on. Please, just hear me out. I've never asked for much, Richard. But I can't leave her here. I want to bring her home just for a while. You've lost your mind, he snapped. We're not adopting someone else's mistake. You don't know her story. Her mother could be a junkie or worse. I won't let you drag that into our lives. My voice broke. You know how much I've wanted a child after everything we lost. That was years ago. Eliza, let it go. We have a life, a reputation. I want to let you ruin it by dragging a stranger-esque baby into our home. I don't remember what I said next. Only the shouting, his, mine, then the line went dead. I stood frozen in the dim hallway, heart pounding, fingers numb. Somehow, I ended up in the nurse's washroom, gripping the sink so I wouldn't collapse. My reflection in the mirror didn't even look like me. It looked like someone older, lonelier, unbearably tired. Tears poured down, not just for that baby left alone in her crib, but for me too. For all the years I tried to be perfect, for the child I lost, for the motherhood that never came. And yet, through the grief, something stirred. I didn't care what Richard said, that baby needed someone. And for the first time in a long time, I needed someone too. Maybe we could save each other. I don't remember much about the drive home that night. Just the sound of the windshield wipers, the blur of city lights, and the ache inside me. Boston had never felt colder, the streets shimmered with rain, but the real chill came from somewhere deeper, old memories I thought I had buried, Maine, the small town where I grew up. The broken trailer we called home, my father's slurred yelling behind closed doors, the sour stench of beer on the kitchen table. My mother silent by the window, chain smoking like she wished she could disappear into the smoke. They didn't fight, they didn't talk, not to each other. Not to me. Love in that house wasn't spoken, it simply didn't exist. At school, I was the girl with thrift store shoes and patched jeans. The girl who never brought lunch, never got invited anywhere. I learned to shrink into corners, keep my head down, stay quiet. But deep down, I made myself a promise I would get out. I would never live like that again. And I didn't. I studied hard, made it through community college, and pushed my way into nursing school in Boston. That city was supposed to be my escape, and in many ways it was. That's where I met Richard Whitmore. He wasn't charming, not in the way most people imagine. He was older, composed, successful. He owned a high-end building supply company, carried himself like a man who always won. When we met, I was renting a tiny studio and barely making rent. He walked into the store I worked at, asked about cabinet hinges, then asked about me. He didn't sweep me off my feet. No flowers, no grand gestures. Just calm, steady interest. He liked that I was quiet. That I didn't drink, didn't party, didn't demand much. He once told me I was a safe investment. I pretended to take it as a compliment. We married the following spring, and, for a while, I believed it was enough. He had a strong reputation, a beautiful home on Beacon Hill, and he never raised his voice in public. I told myself stability was better than passion. That being cared for was close enough to being loved. But over the years, the cracks grew deeper. Richard didn't like being questioned. He had an opinion about everything: how I should wear my hair, what I should cook, even which friends I could see. The thermostat had to stay at exactly 70. The towels had to be folded a certain way. The floors were never clean enough. He demanded perfection, and I gave it to him because I didn't know what else to do. To outsiders, we looked like a model couple. But inside that elegant brownstone, I was just another piece of furniture. Tidy, silent, replaceable, I had traded the chaos of my childhood for a different kind of emptiness. And that night, when I turned the key in our front door and stepped into our spotless kitchen, I realized something terrifying. I was trapped again. Only this time, the cage was velvet-lined, and I had walked into it myself. There was a time I thought a baby might save us. 5 years after our wedding, I found out I was pregnant. I still remember standing in the cramped hospital bathroom, holding the test in my shaking hands, staring at the 2 pink lines like they couldn't possibly be real. My knees gave out, and I sank to the floor, sobbing not just from joy, but from disbelief. I told Richard that night over dinner. He didn't leap up or sweep me into his arms, but his eyes softened. He nodded, muttered something about carrying on the Whitmore name, and poured us both sparkling water instead of wine. That was his version of celebration. I thought maybe this would change things. Maybe the idea of becoming a father would melt something inside him. It didn't. He didn't slow down. He didn't ask how I was feeling. He still expected spotless floors, multi-course meals, and perfectly pressed shirts every morning. When I mentioned nausea or cramping, he'd wave it off. It's pregnancy, Eliza, not the plague. Women have been doing this for centuries. You'll be fine. Then came that night, the one I try not to remember, but never forget. I had just finished a long shift. My back ached. My feet were swollen. I barely stepped through the door when Richard asked about dinner. He'd invited 2 clients over the next day and wanted the guest room cleaned, the towels replaced, the dining room perfectly set. He didn't care that I looked pale or that I could barely keep food down. I was mopping the hallway because he said it smelled musty when the pain hit, sharp, deep, wrong, then blood. So much blood. I screamed. Richard came running, and for the first time I saw it in his face: panic, guilt, maybe even fear. He called the ambulance, held my hand, sat pale and silent beside me in the But it was too late. Our only child was gone. He was apologetic afterward, tried to do better. Bought flowers, took me to dinner, stayed home more. But by then, it didn't matter. Something inside me had collapsed. I stopped crying, I stopped hoping, I stopped feeling much of anything. And deep inside, I decided I would never let myself dream of being a mother again. The next morning, I woke to a smell I hadn't known in our home for more than 15 years: eggs. I pulled on my rope and walked down the hall, half convinced I was dreaming. There, in our kitchen, the same stainless steel kitchen where I had cooked 1,000 meals without thanks, stood Richard in pajama pants at the stove. He turned when he heard me and gave a faint smile, like he wasn't even sure what he was doing. I made breakfast, he said, as if this was something he did every Saturday. The eggs were overdone, the toast a little burnt. He'd drawn a crooked, smiley face in ketchup on the plate. I just stared at it. Are you feeling all right? I asked, suspicion heavy in my voice. I thought about what you said, he replied quietly, about the baby. I may have overreacted last night. That's the understatement of the year, I muttered. He sat down across from me, folding his hands. If this really means that much to you, if you still want to bring her home, we can do it. I didn't answer right away. Part of me wanted to run into his arms. Another part hesitated. He'd never been before. Never offered me something like this. Was this real or just guilt? But it didn't matter. My heart surged with hope. Thank you, I whispered. Really, thank you. He gave a short nod. So, what do we name her? I smiled. I already knew. Lucy, it feels warm, gentle. Richard stiffened. No, I was thinking. Lydia, I blinked. Lydia, it's a strong name, he said. And it reminds me of someone. I wanted to ask who. I wanted to press, but something in his eyes told me not to. Not yet, so I let go. All right, I said softly. Lydia it is. That evening, we brought Lydia home. She was so small in my arms, barely more than a whisper. The house our cold, curated brownstone suddenly felt too sharp, too bright, too large. I led Richard upstairs to the nursery we had never used. The room that had stayed closed for over a decade. He said nothing, just opened the door and let me carry her inside. Later, I filled the baby tub with warm water while Richard hovered nearby, unsure of what to do. I lowered Lydia gently into the bath, her tiny legs kicking softly as the water embraced her. She's so peaceful, I whispered. Richard stepped closer, towel in hand. She smells like soap and something else. Something new. We laughed, awkward, tentative. But then, as I lifted her out and began drying her off, I saw his expression shift, his brow furrowed, his eyes narrowed. What is that? He asked sharply. What's what? I followed his gaze. Hanging loosely around Lydia's tiny neck was a delicate gold cross. I hadn't noticed it before. It must have slipped under her collar when the nurses dressed her. Small, elegant, the kind of necklace someone made with love. Richard reached out, touched it gently, then froze. His face turned pale. He didn't speak at first, just stared at it like he was seeing a ghost. Eliza, he finally whispered, this cross. I know this cross. What are you talking about? I asked. He sat down on the edge of the bed, gripping the towel so tightly his knuckles went white. Over 20 years ago, when I was just out of college. I had a relationship. It wasn't serious. She got pregnant. I told her I wasn't ready. I didn't want the baby. And when she died giving birth, I let them take the child. I walked away. He looked up at me, his voice breaking. But before I did, I had this cross made. Custom gold, with that same engraving on the back. I gave it to the nurses and asked them to put it around the baby's neck. I couldn't breathe. You're saying Lydia is your granddaughter? I don't know, he said, shaking his head. But that cross, it's the same one. I swear to you, Eliza, it's the one. My heart pounded as I stepped back. You had a daughter, and you never told me? He looked down, ashamed. I thought it was behind me. I thought I could just move on. I stared at him. Then at Lydia. No, I whispered, my voice shaking. We're getting a DNA test tomorrow. The envelope came 3 days later, thick, official, silent in my hands, but screaming inside my chest. I waited until Richard got home. He was pacing before I even opened it. Lydia lay asleep in the next room, her tiny breaths steady, unaware that we were about to measure her place in our world with a percentage. I slid a finger under the seal. Inside, clinical words, barcodes, all wrapped around one brutal number, 0% biological relation between Richard Whitmore and Lydia Rose. Richard read it 3 times. He didn't say a word. He just sat there, eyes fixed on the paper like it might change if he stared long enough. That's impossible, he finally muttered. That can't be right. It's right, I said softly. It's definitive. He stood, running a hand through his hair. But that cross, Eliza, that exact cross, I had it made. There's no way it ended up on another child. I wanted to feel relief, but all I felt was confusion. Maybe it was passed along. Maybe someone else wore it. Richard shook his head. That's not the kind of thing you give away. He looked shaken. But, to his credit, he didn't talk about giving Lydia back. He didn't retreat. He just sat down beside her crib that night, staring at her for hours, like the answers were written in her tiny face. I, on the other hand, couldn't stop thinking about the woman who left her behind. There had to be a record, a signature, something in the hospital files. So I pulled some strings at the nurse's desk. The intake form listed a name, Hannah Fields, 21 years old. No emergency contact, no follow-up address. But there was something scribbled at the bottom of the chart, an old mailing address on the outskirts of Cape Cod. That was all I needed. Richard was frozen in thought, stuck in the past. But I was already moving forward. If we couldn't explain the cross, maybe she could, and I intended to find her. Cape Cod in winter isn't the postcard version most people imagine. It's empty, cold, the beaches colorless, the air smelling of salt and sadness. Little towns folding in on themselves, as if waiting for spring to wake them up. It was in one of those towns, just a scattering of houses on a forgotten road, that we found her. Hannah Fields, her name had haunted me since the moment I read it on Lydia's file. No phone number, no family, no trail, just a smudged address and a whisper of a girl who vanished the moment she gave birth. The house looked abandoned, white paint peeling, shutters falling loose, the porch sagging beneath her steps. We knocked, nothing. I was about to turn away when I saw it, a flicker behind the curtain, movement, hesitation, then the door creaked open. She stood there like a shadow, thin, pale, barely a woman. Her cheeks hollow, her posture guarded, dyed pink hair faded at the roots. A threadbare hoodie over a tank top, despite the freezing wind. She looked at me like I was danger, and maybe I was. "I don't know you," she said, her voice scratchy. I took a slow breath. "My name is Eliza. This is my husband, Richard. We've been caring for your daughter." Her eyes narrowed. I didn't give anyone permission. I know, I said gently, "We're not here to fight. We have questions about the necklace. About the cross." At that, something flickered in her face. She stepped aside. "Come in, but don't touch anything." Inside, the house was colder than outside. Dust clung to every surface, the air thick with mildew. We sat on a couch with springs poking through, while Hannah perched on the edge of a milk crate. "The cross," she said quietly. "It's not mine, it belonged to someone else. Someone I knew." Her voice softened. "Her name was Margaret. But we called her Maggie." She stared at her hands. "We grew up together in foster care, same group home, same cheap bunk beds. She was the good one, always believing life could be different." I glanced at Richard. His eyes had gone distant. Hannah went on, "When I found out I was pregnant, I wanted to disappear. Maggie gave me that cross the day I left, said it never brought her much luck. But maybe it would bring the baby some." Then she looked at me raw, vulnerable. "I never wanted to be a mother. I didn't think I could be." Her voice cracked as she spoke. She just wanted to run. I stayed silent, but inside, I knew two things. This girl wasn't cruel, she was broken, and somehow, this all led back to one name, Maggie Morgan. When we stepped out of Hannah's broken house and into the cold wind, I felt something shift inside me. Her words kept replaying in my head, Maggie Morgan. The name Morgan wasn't rare, but it wasn't nothing either, and when Hannah said it, Richard froze. He looked past her like he had seen a ghost. That haunted me more than anything. In the car, Richard stayed silent. Halfway down the coast, with headlights cutting through fog, he finally spoke. "Her name wasn't Margaret when she was born," he said. "We named her Grace." I turned to him, my heart pounding. "She was your daughter, wasn't she?" He nodded once. His voice was flat. I was barely 20. Too ambitious for a child, too selfish to admit it. "Her mother wanted to keep her." I said no. I signed the papers. and walked away. His hands gripped the wheel so tight his knuckles turned white. And you never tried to find her? I asked. What would I have said? He snapped. That I threw her away for a corner office. For stock options, I said nothing. The rest of the drive blurred into gray. But I couldn't stop thinking about that little silver cross. How it passed from a baby abandoned by her father to another baby abandoned by her mother. There was something cruel in that symmetry, and something holy too. That night, I searched every record I could. Margaret Morgan, adoption lists, old forums. It felt strange, looking for someone else's daughter, someone I had no claim to, and yet, it didn't feel like she was only Richard's daughter anymore. She was the girl who gave away the only thing she had left, her necklace, to bring hope to another lost child, and that act had reached me. Finally, I found a record, a group home report. Margaret Morgan and Hannah Fields, same date, same location. It wasn't proof, not yet, but it was a door. And I was ready to walk through it. I looked at Richard, sitting with a glass of whiskey in his hand, staring like it held all the answers. I'm going to find her, I said. He didn't argue. He just whispered. I don't deserve it, maybe he didn't. But Maggie did. We searched for days. Old addresses, group homes, staff, until finally, we stood in front of a brick building near a design school in Boston. A converted dorm, room 3C. I didn't know what to expect when the door opened. Anger, coldness, but what I saw was different. A girl with Richard's green eyes, sharp, guarded, filled with disbelief. She wore a dark hoodie stained with ink, her arms crossed tightly like she was holding herself together. Hi, I said softly, are you Maggie? She didn't answer me, her eyes locked on Richard. You, she whispered, then louder, trembling. What are you doing here? I just wanted to know. Richard tried. The words hit like a slap. She moved to shut the door. Please, he begged, stepping forward. I didn't know about Hannah. About the baby, I'm not here with excuses. I just needed to see you, to say, I'm sorry, Maggie laughed. A short, bitter laugh. Sorry, you're sorry now? After 21 years, her voice shook as she pointed at him. You told my mother you weren't ready, that you had a future to protect. And because of that, I grew up without one. Richard froze, his lips parted, but no words came. You think showing up now, in a suit, with sad puppy eyes, makes it better. She stepped back and slammed the door shut. The sound echoed down the hallway. Behind it, her sobs bled through the walls. I reached for Richard's hand, but he pulled away. Outside, under the gray Boston sky, he sat on a bench, staring at nothing. I had never seen him so hollow, so small. The man who once controlled everything was drowning in a truth he could never fix. I deserve that, he whispered. I said nothing. Because some doors, once slammed, don't open again, and maybe they don't need to. Maybe they stay closed, so something new can open. Back at the cottage, everything felt different, warm, softer. Hannah sat on the rug, cross-legged, holding Lydia in her arms. She wasn't perfect. Her hands trembled when the baby cried. She fumbled with diapers like a first-time mom. But she was trying, and more than that, she was present. I watched from the doorway as she sang lullabies, her voice raspy but tender. Lydia grabbed her pink-dyed hair with tiny, curious fingers, and Hannah laughed. Not perfectly, not smoothly, but real. It had taken weeks to get here. At first, Hannah wouldn't even hold Lydia. She sat on the edge of the bed, arms wrapped around her knees, afraid to look at the child she had once given up. But day by day, we built something, routines, small wins, trust. I taught her how to swaddle, how to recognize different cries, how to breathe when anxiety hit like a wave. And somewhere along the way, I stepped back. That was the hardest part. I loved Lydia like she was mine. From the moment I held her in the hospital, I imagined raising her, watching her first steps, hearing her first words. But this wasn't about me. It was about what was right, so I let go. Not all at once, but enough. I still helped when Hannah needed sleep. still sang lullabies when she ran out of words, but I stopped hovering. I stopped correcting every little thing. One evening, Richard stood in the doorway. He watched Hannah sleep on the couch. Lydia tucked in her arms. He didn't speak, but his face said everything, a quiet ache and a sliver of hope. "She's a good mother," I whispered. He nodded, swallowing hard. "Maybe one day, Maggie will see that." Maybe she let me try again. I didn't answer. Some wounds take time. But in that small house, with laughter returning to the walls, I felt something else too, a beginning. We met Maggie in the public garden near Beacon Hill. Spring was fading into summer. Hannah held Lydia close, grounding herself. Richard stood beside me, trembling. For once, not from anger, not from pride, but fear. Then Maggie arrived, confident, poised, her eyes sharp like broken glass. "Why now?" she asked. "Is this some redemption tour? Want a family photo with the child you didn't raise and the woman you ignored?" Richard flinched. "I didn't know how to be a father," he whispered. "I was a coward. I cared more about money and reputation than family." Her gaze cut deeper. "You knew about me." "I did," he admitted. "I tried to forget, but that cross, it brought everything back. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I want to say, I'm sorry." A long silence. Then Maggie reached into her coat pocket. She pulled out the small silver cross, bent, tarnished. "I wore it when I was little," she said softly. "Then I threw it away because I hated you." Her eyes shifted to Lydia, then back to him. "But Hannah told me something. Forgiveness isn't about who deserves it. It's about freeing yourself from hate." She placed the cross in Richard's palm. "I'm done carrying this." Then she turned and walked away, leaving behind something heavier than gold, but lighter than pain. Sometimes co-parents, sometimes just quiet companions sipping tea late at night. Two women learning how to heal side by side, and Lydia. Oh, Lydia, she called us both Mama without hesitation. She had just started school, that year tiny backpack, crooked smile, and a laugh so bright strangers would turn their heads. She was the heart of our little family, though she didn't know it. A child once discarded, now the glue binding 3 generations of broken women. She brought light into rooms that had only known silence, joy into rituals that once felt hollow. Every time she reached for Maggie's hand or kissed Hannah's cheek, it was as if the universe itself was repairing through her tiny fingertips. Sometimes I'd find Lydia at the window seat, humming softly while holding the same cross that once shattered our world. She didn't know its history yet, but one day she would. And I hoped then she would feel proud, not because we were perfect, but because we chose each other again and again. We are not the family I once imagined. We are something stranger, deeper, stitched together by pain, by grace, and by 1,000 small decisions to stay and to love, even when it's hard. That night, as I tucked Lydia into bed, my unborn child shifting gently beneath my hand, I kissed her forehead and whispered, "You know, baby girl, we thought we were saving you." She blinked up at me, puzzled. I smiled softly, "But really,